Now, what is believed to be the only portrait of William Shakespeare painted from life will go on display at Moscow's Tretyakov Gallery this Saturday as part of a wider celebration of his life and work. Tomorrow actually marks 400 years since the playwright's death. Well, joining us now is Professor of Shakespeare at Warwick University, Carol Rutter. Carol, afternoon to you. First of all, perhaps tell us about this painting, the significance and the ties with Russia.
Well, I'm very glad that this portrait is going to Russia. Anything that we can do to help relations between the two nations is fantastic, but I'm particularly happy that the Chandos portrait is going. So the Chandos portrait is going because it's a portrait of Shakespeare that gives Shakespeare as a man with a 5 o'clock shadow and a pirate's earring in his ear and makes him look like a very interesting playwright, a playwright for the nation.
And on researching this, I discovered how much to heart the Russians take Shakespeare and how closely aligned they feel with him and his works.
Well, I know that Leo Tolstoy thought that he was a terrible playwright and actually thought that Chekhov was even worse than Shakespeare. So restoring a Shakespeare that's beloved of people like Pasternak is a good thing.
So, as I said, 400 years since his death tomorrow. There are all sorts of things planned, aren't they? Tell us about some of them.
Well, we're going to have a great festive occasion tomorrow. The streets of Stratford upon Avon will be lined with visitors, with guests from all nations. We'll raise flags, we'll have a procession through the church, people will carry bouquets. There will be a great outpouring of affection from all of us who make our lives around Shakespeare. I'm a teacher of Shakespeare. There will be actors on the streets who are players of Shakespeare. There will be people who are writers about Shakespeare, and general public who are lovers of Shakespeare will be here in Stratford to celebrate this life that has given us so much. But I hope that other people will come to Stratford over the summer. We're going to be opening New Place, the house where Shakespeare did most of his later work, where he died. We're restoring New Place to allow visitors to look at the footprint of the house where he lived. I've just had a sneak preview this morning to see that the knot gardens are all newly laid out. Some of the artwork is in place. We have a beautiful bronze desk to represent the work of the playwright and the playwright's chair. The buildings are going to be showing the life and times of Shakespeare, and most impressively to my mind, we've got a display of costumes all made out of a kind of paper fabric that will allow people to get really up close to seeing what early modern costume clothing looked like. It will be a very, very wonderful time and experience to be in Stratford. So do come and have a look at what we're doing in this town.
All right, and Carol, am I right in saying that some scenes that were edited out of his plays, of his writings, deleted scenes, have been refound and re-included or released?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Deleted scenes, deleted writings from some of his plays, some of his works have been put out again for people to discover.
I'm sorry, I can't follow that.
Okay, I'll move on from that. What I wanted to ask you as well, you're a teacher in Shakespeare. Keeping it relevant is probably an ignorant question for somebody who teaches it to completely new generations, people who newly find love. Does it concern you keeping things alive in the world of Shakespeare?
Well, I think that Shakespeare is a playwright for our time, for new audiences of young people today. There's plenty for young people to find in Shakespeare that is about them. One of the things that's most immediate about Shakespeare is a way of helping us to talk to ourselves about ourselves in a language that we can recognize, that both talks about the past but talks about a future.
And are you finding in the rereading, in the reteaching, meanings, discoveries from the literature that change for you as time goes on? That
change, then challenge, of course, yes. I mean, I think that there are as we progress with Shakespeare, we find a playwright who is talking to us about youth, and then a playwright who's talking to us about middle age, and then as we go old, when we look at King Lear or The Winter's Tale, we find a playwright who is helping us to understand what it means to be an old person, and an old person who's trying to survive in generation gaps with young people. There's a playwright who is constantly talking to us about who we are at any stage in our lives, and I'm always discovering new things to think about in Shakespeare. A line like "to be or not to be" strikes you very differently when you're in your 20s than when you're in your 70s. Or a play like a line like "He doth teach the torches to burn brightly" strikes us differently during our age. So we're constantly engaging differently with Shakespeare because we're hearing him differently as we live with Shakespeare through our own time.
Just briefly, Carol, what's your favourite? Do you have one?
My favorite is always the play that I'm working on at the present time. The play that I'm working on at the moment has to do with the Serpent of Old Nile, Cleopatra and Antony and Cleopatra, and thinking about the original performance of that play. Shakespeare wrote that play for a black queen of the Nile. I want to see that black queen of the Nile reinstalled in our theatres, but that's the one that's fascinating me at the present time, Antony and Cleopatra.
Carol Rutter, a delight to talk to you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.